This is your big boy right here. They have these little mini ones, which are the size of your thumb. I think these are for travel. This is the normal size, but if you like it, it's more economical to get this one. There's another product that I really like from Squirt that it's actually even better than this. It's this barrier balm. This has tea tree oil, and this you put kind of where your crotch is. If you want to have a party on the chamois, this is your stuff. It prevents saddle sores. If you go for long rides and it's really hot, this stuff will prevent friction. The important thing is never confuse them. You don't want to put barrier balm on your chain, and you don't want to put this on your crotch.
What I'm going to do is just put it right where the rollers are, and you don't have to get it all over the entire chain. You just have to put it where the links are, where the rollers are, and that way it'll sneak its way inside. Tomorrow morning, before I go for the ride, so I'm going to use a clean rag and wipe off the excess that accumulates over the surface area of the chain, and that way you have a nice chain that's just pure metal on the outside and wax on the inside. So this is what I do for fun on Fridays before I do a weekend of riding. So I'm gonna go for a bike ride this morning.
Are you going to ride with Daniel today?
No, he's fixing a fence. I was gonna ask him if he needed help, but then I decided I don't want to do that.
Such a good friend you are.
There were 4 things that occurred in the first bike fit. The first principle was COPS, K-O-P-S, knee over pedal spindle. So what they do is they take your knee as you're seated on the bicycle, and they would use a plumb line. And whether it was on the patella or the tibial tuberosity was for much debate, but it should line up, the knee should line up with the pedal spindle. That was the idea. That gave you the fore and aft of the saddle. The height was your inseam multiplied by 0.883. When I was a child, they had toe clips, and you would put the cleat right where the ball of the foot was. And the last thing was that when you were seated with the proper saddle height and the fore and aft, the length of your stem was essentially determined by when you were in the drops, that the top of the handlebars would obstruct your view of the hub. These guidelines really don't work anymore because the knee over pedal spindle is probably a very poor way to determine whether the fore and aft of a saddle is appropriate. It's more based upon balance. The cleat position, I'll tell you later, is just not over the big toe. First of all, if I had to do that these days, I probably wouldn't be cycling. The saddle height based on a measurement really doesn't work anymore because of your flexibility of your hamstrings and your overall body. Also, those numbers were based upon the shoes and the stack height of the shoes and the pedal. And these days, shoes are totally different. The last thing is the geometry of the bike is such that the obstruction of the hub has no meaning as to the length of the stem. It really should, in theory, be based on comfort and your tolerance for aerodynamics. Back then, this type of bike fit actually worked for me. The reason why was because I was 14 years old. Everything works for a 14-year-old. You don't know any better, so you just set it and forget it. So now let's fast forward to the age of 30, because in between that time and 30 years old, of course, I was in college, I had priorities, sorority girls, I had to study a lot, get good grades, a lot of time in school. And so during that time, I did mountain biking, running, swimming, weightlifting, stretching. I ate burritos. So I just didn't have a lot of time to do cycling. I was using my mountain bike a lot. And then all of a sudden I had a patient who was opening up a bike shop, and he was building the bike shop himself and developed carpal tunnel syndrome in his hands from using his hammer and screwdriver and stuff. And I helped him, and he was so happy that he basically gave me a bike for cost, a road bike. And I rode it for a number of years before I even thought of altering the bike fit. But between the ages of 30 and 40, I had numerous bike fits. And this is where it starts to get interesting, that I had the expensive bike fits. I had the retool guy, I had the specialized type of philosophy, and I had people look at me through the lens of a computer. Needless to say, it didn't really work out. So let's go on a ride, and I'll tell you more about what actually worked.
The best bike fit that I've had has really been a journey. It first started out with Joe Friel, and what he was doing was talking about mid-foot position. And it was mainly for triathletes to save their calves during a run. And at the time I was getting Morton's neuroma pain in my feet, and I found that, wow, this mid-foot position really helped me. Then I discovered Steve Hogg, and that is when the changes really started to take place for the better. So Steve Hogg had this website, and on his website, he had a ton of free stuff. How to set your own saddle, how to decide whether you need a wedge or not, how to decide whether you need a shim in your shoe. He also had things like how to know you're balanced on the bike, fore and aft on the saddle. And I'll tell you, compared to the retool fit that I had, I ended up lowering my saddle by 24 millimeters. That's pretty much an inch. How could that be so different? My handlebars, I shortened the stem and I raised it about 5 millimeters. And I changed my insoles. So I have some G8s in them right now. I have Lake shoes. I have, of course, everybody's got trouble with saddles. It has nothing to do with the saddle, but this is the saddle that I eventually turned on to. And the best bike fit I ever had was from a guy who never met me, all the way on the other side of the earth. He's in Australia. Now, Steve Hogg trained a number of people, and he has retired, but his website is still up. You can still get this stuff for free. But if you haven't noticed, there are two guys on the internet that are very, very smart. Neil Stanberry and BikeFit James. And they are, I'm gonna say, carrying on the torch. Now, Neil Stanberry has been selling some type of self-program where you buy a program and you could do a bike fit yourself and get, from what he describes, 80% of the way there without someone seeing it. I haven't seen it, I'm not sponsored by them, I'm not really endorsing them, but I'm willing to bet that it's pretty damn good. If it's anything like what you'll see on Steve Hogg's website, it made me a lot more comfortable on the bike and more stable. Now, the funny thing about Steve Hogg that I thought was kind of a blast was, for some reason, he did not like chiropractors. Yet, I really liked his stuff because the way he described, for example, proprioception, he used an indicator muscle to test, which is what chiropractors use. So without him really realizing it, he talked and did a bike fit as almost like a chiropractor would, which I thought was fascinating. So if you haven't seen all these other videos with BikeFit James and Neil Stanberry, they're pretty cool. But what sparked this video for me to help you or whoever's watching, is Neil Stanberry just did a video where he did a bike fit on a guy, and it turned out he wanted to change the handlebars. And the guy has a new bike, and it's integrated handlebars. You know where this is going. And he told him that it would be $1,600 to change out the handlebars. And the guy's jaw just dropped, you know? When I was doing the bike fit on myself, basically, a new stem, 40 bucks. You just buy it, put it on, it takes you 10 minutes yourself. But with these new bikes, to change your bike fit is very, very expensive. So I have 165 millimeter cranks. I simply just bought the cranks, put them on. It wasn't rocket science. I have Shimano pedals, but I have the extra 4 millimeters on each side to give you a wider Q angle. These are very simple things that a home mechanic with hardly any skills can actually do themselves if you have the right type of bike. I've been hesitant to buy a new bike only because I know what it's gonna take to get the fit right. But ultimately, strangely, the best bike fit I ever got was from someone where I did it myself. Someone helped me, Steve Hogg, but I did it myself. I'm gonna get going here. There's a guy that also just did a video. Now my cycling channel is Cycling in Southern California. His is NorCal Cycling. And he just did a video, and he talked with one of his fellow racers, and they were talking about bike fit. And both of them said they've had professional bike fits and the results were lackluster. But you really have to understand the body, and I'm sure that a great bike fitter is worth their weight in total gold. But you gotta find the right one. And if you can't find the right one, you gotta learn how to do it yourself. So that's my story, I'm sticking to it. Man, it's gloomy today. So without learning about Joe Friel and then Steve Hogg and learning about cleat position and how to push my cleats back, I would probably be in so much pain from having my cleats basically on the ball of my foot that I wouldn't be able to ride anymore. And that snowballed into a bunch of bike fit changes that made my bike a lot more comfortable.